Good evening. Well, 24 hours on, in many ways, the more we learn, the worse it gets. We're beginning to understand that many of those on this list had already been rejected for asylum status in the United Kingdom. We learn more about the super injunction. We're even told we don't yet know everything about this situation. And the question that I've been asked, by friends who aren't necessarily directly involved in everyday politics is, well, if we haven't been told the truth about this, how many other things are being withheld from us? And that really gets to the heart of the real problem here, a continuing breakdown of trust in government, in Parliament, in our whole democratic system. And I was quite shocked also to hear that both in the Commons and the Lords, the respective speakers have been briefed on this, to basically stop any MP or member of the House of Lords using parliamentary privilege. But I thought the interview that was done earlier on today with Defence Secretary John Healey with Sky News said more than almost anything else today.
It's feasible, isn't it, that some of the people on that leaked list were applying to come here when perhaps they hadn't done anything to support British forces or fight against the Taliban. Now their names are on that list and at some sort of a risk. Does that give them automatic rights to then come here and claim asylum?
No, it's not just feasible. Most of those names on the list were people who didn't work alongside our forces, didn't serve with our forces, and there was never the plan to bring everyone in on that data set into this country, and nor should we.
Damning, absolutely damning. Most of the names on that 20,000 person list would not have been eligible in any way at all for this resettlement scheme. And there were some of us back in 2021 who were urging caution, worried about whether there'd be some very, very bad people who'd creep under the net, potential terrorists, also worried culturally about what it would mean for so many people to come from that country to this. So the big question is, what should happen next? Love to get your thoughts at home. Please tweet #Farage on GB News or email farage@gbnews.com. I'm joined in the studio by Rob Bates, Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. I'm joined by Baroness Diane Hayter, Labour peer and former Labour Deputy Leader of the House of Lords, and regular panellist Kwasi Kwarteng, former Chancellor of the Exchequer. And Rob, one of those areas that I was concerned about in 2021 but didn't really have the full facts were attitudes towards women. And I remember one of the arguments in 2001 for going to war in Afghanistan was to liberate women, which doesn't appear to have happened. I know there's a graph that we're going to put up, but just give us the statistics for Afghans that have settled in this country, about 40,000 of them so far, and what that's meant for women in Britain.
Yeah, so Afghanistan, those Afghani nationals that have arrived in the UK over recent years, those that have not yet obtained British citizenship, if you look at the graph on your screen, you'll see that they are overwhelmingly overrepresented in the conviction rates for sexual offences. That's your rapes, your sexual assaults, your gropings, all those kind of things that are effectively making life, especially in the big cities and the big towns, for women and girls in this country a lot worse. They are 22 times more likely than Brits to be convicted. They have a
Let's just slow down. Let's just repeat that statistic. Let's all just get a hold of that.
It is a staggering one. So Afghani nationals have a conviction rate for sexual offences that is 22 times higher than the British population, those with British nationality. That's not including those that, of course, Afghanistani nationals that have subsequently obtained British citizenship as well. But it's not just the sexual offences as well. It's drugs, which is 11 times higher. It's violent offences, which is 6 times higher. It's robbery, which is 11 times higher. It's theft, which is 4 times higher. It's weapon possession, which is 6 times higher as well. So there is a whole host of cultural problems that do emerge when you see individuals from backgrounds that are perhaps less culturally compatible with Britain coming in large numbers. And I think the fact that we have seen tens of thousands of individuals smuggled into the country without the British population even being given the decency of being told about this is frankly a scandal. And
of course, Afghans making up one of the largest proportions of people crossing the English Channel on small boats on top of this resettlement scheme. Those facts and figures that you just gave, we couldn't have even had this debate 5 years ago, could we?
No, and this was something that the British population were just not given. This is something that politicians were concealing, they were refusing to give out. It was something that the Ministry of Justice was very reluctant to actually give to our think tank themselves. So it was something that I think they've kind of been besotted with this idea that multiculturalism and mass migration and bringing in individuals from every corner of life, whatever the culture of that country might be, is such a universal good that this data is not something that the British population actually need to know. And I think what we've seen with this recent situation as well is these concerns about community tensions and the British population being agitated by 24,000 Afghan individuals being brought into the country is that we're being mollycoddled, and individuals in government in Whitehall are frankly lying to the British population because they don't want us to know why the changes that are happening to our community are taking place, why we're seeing spikes in crimes, especially sexual violence crimes, why we're seeing the economy tanking as well. It's because the British government have signed up hook, line and sinker for this narrative of mass migration, individuals from certain countries being brought in, being a universal good, and they're not prepared to countenance that it perhaps isn't.
Kwasi, just how much damage did your government do to this country?
I think the problem is wider than that.
Well, let's deal with this one to begin with,
No, it's true, but there's an administrative failure. I mean, you're quite right to say that successive governments, our government, were poor on this issue, but I don't think people were deceived because we wanted to let all these people in. I think the problem was you've seen administrative cock-ups, if I can put it that way.
Of a gigantic proportion.
Of a huge proportion. And with this particular incident, I mean, I just ran some figures. 20,000 people equates to 7 billion. That's 350,000
per person.
Per person. I didn't understand.
Where does that
how do you
come
get to 350,000? I mean, unless you're giving them, I don't know, a two-bedroom flat in Neasden or wherever it might be, I don't see how you get to those figures. So that really concerns me. I think the cover-up also is very disappointing because, I mean, I wasn't part of that. I mean, I was part of the administration, but I didn't have oversight on that, on the Home Office.
Disappointing or scandalous?
Well, you can use whatever adjective you want, but it's a real problem if you're spending 350,000 per person, and then when it happens, you're essentially saying, we're not going to tell the people the truth.
Yeah.
I think that's a real break.
And I mentioned in my little talk about a sort of breakdown of trust in government, parliament, what else haven't we been told? It's quite serious, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the cover-up really, as someone who's been in government, who's been an MP, the cover-up really concerned me because actually that's, as Rob was saying, that's essentially trying to deceive. That's where the deception is.
Yeah.
When you know what's happened, there's been a complete
it's awful. It's awful.
You're trying to cover it up.
It's awful.
And also it was foolish because at some point the truth will get out.
It always does. Diane, welcome to the programme. We were chatting in the green room before we came on air, and you were saying how much tougher life is for young girls today than it was when you grew up. When you hear those statistics that Rob's just given us, cold, hard, frightening statistics, don't we need to be just an awful lot more careful about who comes to our country?
Well, there's two things I'd say. One is, of course, that the particular people coming in are of a particular age, and I don't think your figures are actually done by age. As I'm
they are
problems because it is young men who commit crimes. Sorry about that, men.
Sure.
But actually, in general,
yes, but
the other issue, and I know as a woman, I will take no lessons from anyone about the importance of dealing with violence against, and it isn't just violence; it's disrespect. It's the whole thing that goes with it. I'll take no lessons from anyone. But I would say this, be careful what you say, because that falling in trust, we've just done some really interesting polling across Australia, Germany, America and here, and actually there's that fall-off of trust of politicians everywhere.
Sure.
You're not alone.
No, I appreciate that.
you made me feel so much better.
And therefore, I think we need to be slightly careful that we don't say, well, this breakdown of trust is all about a particular group of migrants coming in. So be careful.
It's part of a wider
what we say.
picture.
It's a wider picture, and it's a wider picture because the life, as we were saying outside, is very complicated. I was just looking at some figures about migration, that in 1951, there were about 2.1 million migrants. We're now looking about 45 million
That's
migrants.
global. That's the global.
That's the global figure.
Yeah.
But it is about, therefore, we have to, I think, rethink how we define
But isn't the truth, Diane?
asylum, about how
But isn't the truth, Diane? I mean, you talked about respect, all right? And all of us completely understand what you're saying. But the fact is that in Afghanistan, women are not treated with respect. And therefore, if you take males from Afghanistan, they are going to have, like it or not, they're going to have different attitudes.
And therefore, first of all, there are Afghans to whom we owe a duty to bring them here.
Yes.
They fought with us or they protected us.
Agreed.
And for that group coming in, you know, we really have to bring them in. I take the point about the amount of money. I cannot believe it. But we do have to, I know, but we do have to make sure that we help them assimilate, because they are moving different culture, a different culture about a respect for older people as well. I mean, some of them could teach some of our youngsters a lesson or two about respect for older.
I'm not sure
some
about
could.
that.
But what I'm saying is that for the group that we absolutely owe this, I think it's a duty to.
Well, if we owe this
we
debt,
have to make sure that we help them assimilate into this
if
country.
we owe this debt, is there not perhaps a better way in which to deliver that? As you say, there is a cultural difference that we have to help them bridge, and we spend an extraordinary amount of money on these integration schemes. Is there not an argument to be made that they are perhaps better served by using our asylum budget to give them asylum in a country, a third country closer to their country of origin, where perhaps the norms...
That may well be right, but the most shocking thing of all of this is John Healey's statement that I played at the start of this show, that most of the people on that list did not help us.
On the list, not for people who came in. That was why it took, you know, a lot to go through the list, because the list was people who applied. And obviously a number of people would have applied because they want to get out of Afghanistan because they don't like it. It didn't qualify.
But they're still coming.
But no, that's the people on the list, not the people we took in. Because what happens, what your government did, quite rightly, was to look at the people that applied and then had to do two checks on them. One was, did they really work for us and for our either our armed forces or our embassy or whatever there? And then secondly, they had to do due
But my
diligence.
understanding of this is that actually 2/3 of the 20,000 were rejected as asylum seekers. That's the problem. In that we looked through the people and we only said, okay, a third of them.
What we don't actually know is how careful we've been about the first 7,000 from that list.
That's right.
And there's no way that 7,000 Afghans acted as interpreters and gave us that level. Many hundreds, I would absolutely agree.
But it was their families as well. And quite rightly, you don't expect, just if it was a man who was interpreter, to leave his family behind. So we're not talking about 7,000 individuals who necessarily work for us, but them and their families. And you've got to get their families out. The threats to their families, and again, particularly to their women folk, is very high.
We're getting to the heart of it. It's been an administrative bull's up. I mean, everyone is saying that, and that's pretty clear. And then the bit that I find baffling is the cost.
No, I agree. Final word of Rob on this.
Well, I was just going to say, I think we also need to bear in mind the chain migration implications of this. I think the cost is attributable over a certain period of time. So I think, I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary. I think the Home Office released figures recently on just the sheer amount that is given to local authorities per resettled individual, and is absolutely eye-watering. I don't know where that money goes. So I think our asylum system has effectively been one that's got carried away with these human rights ideas and these ideas of justice, which whatever that means. And we need to realise that probably the best way to actually focus it going forward is to have one that looks to resettle those individuals in genuine need much closer to their country of origin, because I think...
For cultural reasons.
For cultural reasons, I think the British population are sort of reaching the point where they think their communities are changing beyond recognition.
It's a strong point. All right, I'm going to draw stumps on this. By the way, this debate doesn't end here at 17 minutes past 7 on GB News. This will go on for months, I promise you. Now, I have a statement from the MOD. The MOD has made it clear that the rejection is nothing to do with alleged criminal behaviour, as is being reported in some publications. Well, there we are. That clears it all up, doesn't it?